I'm Catherine Clancy. I'm doing my project over illicit drug use during pregnancy and the effects on unborn children. Um, with that being said, I've posted my abstract above. For my passion for human sciences and human development as a whole, as well as addiction and recovery sciences, I decided to do mine over this simply because within today's times, we've seen a skyrocket in babies being born to addictions and how addictions can affect their lives for pretty much for their whole life to come. There's plenty of lasting effects that they experience because of their mother's choices. Things such as the environment, the theory of environmentalism was discussed, and how um, children learn, or not even just children, but parents as well, are affected by their environment. And as a child developing in the womb, it's a very vital developmental time for this child, making it have lasting impacts if it's born with addictions. Things such as lower heart rates, and even sudden infant death syndrome is also something really prevalent due to illicit drug use during pregnancy. So with that being said, it becomes a really complex issue, and more than just the fact that you can't just look at it from one discipline. It needs to be looked at from many different insights, viewpoints, and different disciplinary perspectives, just to kind of gain a better understanding of it as a whole. So with that being said, I decided that my disciplines of human sciences, human development, and ADRS were the best in discovering the issues that arise with illicit drug use in pregnancy and the lasting effects that it has. So with that being said, I did a literature review, and I found that pretty much that since it's a wicked problem, it can't necessarily be solved, but it can be lessened, in fact. So kind of to lessen the burden of this, I believe that getting more knowledge out there and more research on the topic is necessary. While you can't necessarily do research on, a mother and giving her drugs, that's definitely immoral. You can't do that. But definitely getting surveys out there, and definitely getting doctors, I guess, to kind of bring it up in appointment checkups for new expecting mothers is something that is really going to bring down these stats that we see. With that being said, I also found out that a lot of prenatal drug exposure isn't necessarily due to the society that they're in or to social norms, but it could be also due because they have high levels of stress and don't have very good coping strategies. So this is kind of really prevalent in ADRS about how if you don't have very good coping strategies within life, you kind of turn towards substances. So just because drugs are lower cost, and just because they're more prevalent and available, doesn't mean that that's why they're being used more often. Something else that I found was that some of the deficits that children are experiencing due to prenatal drug exposure are things such as neurobehavioral deficits. And this came about from not just illicit drug use, but abusing alcohol and cocaine together. This is something that's become more prevalent, is the use of two substances once. And this knowledge has come through because of surveys. So I'm really grateful that there's people out there that can answer these surveys truthfully, because without that, we wouldn't have all this prevalent information to do more research on. With that being said, there's also long-term memory impairments, and I also found out that it also kind of creates a sense of craving for the child, because if they have it during this vital developmental time for themselves, it's something that they end up craving after birth when they don't have it. So this can kind of be seen like how you see something rewarding, so your brain lights up, correct? Well, for a child that's been experienced or has been exposed to drug use during pregnancy, when they see things that they're interested in and that they really like, their brain lights up. But when they see things that are, just kind of there, they, you know what I mean? Like, say, like, not a new toy, but like a pencil or something, their brain's not going to light up like it would for a normal person that's kind of thinking about it, kind of saying like, oh, well, what can I do with that? No, a child that's been exposed to illicit drugs during pregnancy, the light up in their brain is completely different and rewired. So that kind of goes back to the developmental period that they experience. With that being said, from an addiction and recovery point of view, drug abuse during pregnancy is a very big problem, not just economically, but also socially. So there's many withdrawal symptoms, like I said, that have to do with addiction and recovery. These withdrawal symptoms can be very deadly for an unborn child, also creating death, like I said before, sudden death syndrome. That's something we really want to try to veer away from, and those rates are really prevalent simply because of drug use. So with the growing numbers of babies born with addiction, more and more babies are seen to be crack cocaine addicts. So this seemed very odd to me, and that you would think that people would understand that drugs are not okay while you're pregnant, but unfortunately, maybe not everybody understands that. So moving forward, also within ADRS, you see how the theory of environmentalism plays a giant role in how people develop their addictions, and babies within the womb, develop their addiction from their mother. Even though it's not something they learned, it's not something that they had a choice either. This can also be seen in human development, how people learn from their societies and learn these norms that either drugs are okay or drugs aren't okay. And that can become a conflicting insight in the end, because people don't realize that, what am I trying to say? People don't realize that it can go either way. So within human development, it can be a good thing because people see these norms, and it kind of veers away from the drug use because they see within their society that it's not okay. But then on the other hand, they could be using it as a coping strategy because they lack these human developmental needs as a child as well. And within addiction and recovery sciences, the theory of environmentalism can be a good thing because, like I said, it can veer them away from addiction and teach them that that's not okay. But it can also be a negative impact in that they learn from their friends and the people around them, and just because they're pregnant doesn't mean that they have to stop drugs because their friends do it too. So either way, it can be a negative or a positive thing when you're looking from either discipline, which can create conflicting views for people on this topic. So I believe that the best way to kind of get this research out there would be to do surveys, obviously, because you can't just do immoral practices to kind of get research evidence over this. And so the last thing I'd like to give y'all about this is I feel like that this would stand up to plenty of tests simply because it's well balanced overall, and it gives great insight from many different perspectives, and has great detail and great evidence behind it as to why these drug use during pregnancy is so detrimental. A quote from the book that I'd like to leave y'all with is, "Certainly scholars all advocate communicating the results of their research to appropriate audiences. They just don't think of it as a test. Because this study gains the attention of everyone," and then I said, simply because every human could be affected by this at some point in their life, it becomes of greater importance to be studied. So with that being said, if we want these to be, if we want this to get out there and we want people to realize the harmful effects of illicit drug use during pregnancy, not everybody knows them, and getting the word out there, kind of shining the light on this is the perfect way to educate those out there. And this information is not just useful to new mothers or new fathers, but to everybody out there, because everybody at some point in their life was born one way or another and could have been affected by this or currently is. So this research is really necessary. Thanks for the time, and I hope y'all enjoy and learn a lot.